Welcome to this recording of Power Tools for Literacy. Literacy skills are important for all students and is not something that's just taught in English classes. I'm happy to share this presentation with our resident literacy expert, none other than Ms. Tracy Bourne.
I agree with Mr. Harris. Research shows that many schools lack a comprehensive approach to teaching literacy across the curriculum and lack the knowledge or professional development to address reading motivation.
So, what we strive to do today is just to give you a few helpful power tools to incorporate reading and writing skills building into your daily lessons. These are easy to implement strategies.
These strategies we're presenting to you in this video come from Power Tools for Adolescent Literacy, Strategies for Learning by Jan Rizzoli and Carol Sears.
So on to our first strategy. So our very first strategy we want to talk about is reading, a reading strategy. All right. So we have a few symbols to have students actively engage in their reading, and I call this marking the text. And so I would give students a reading and say, hey, I want for you to, one, identify the very important points. All right. And you can do that by simply putting an exclamation point beside ideas that you think are very important. All right. Then I will have students circle any key terms. This could be vocabulary terms or terms that they deem are important to the reading. And then if this is coinciding with you giving some notes or some kind of background information, then perhaps I will have them start anything that corroborates what I'm giving them as far as notes and what's in the reading. All right. For example, if I look at this reading on what kinds of homework seem to be most effective, students would then get this and they will have the symbols that they're going to use to kind of mark the text. Oh, well, they might highlight this word because they think it's a very important point. All right?
So they put an exclamation mark next to that,
right? Yes, they will put an exclamation point next to that. All right? And they will go through the reading and continue to mark the text. After a few minutes, then we will move on to kind of make sense of this reading. All right? I call this even dozens, all right? And there's a step-by-step outline that's also attached to this presentation. One of the things that we call this even dozens is now that we take this reading, students are going to then divide into groups of about 4 or 5, all right? They're going to draw 12 boxes in a grid-like format on this box. They're going to take turns writing down the main concepts or terms from the reading and or the notes randomly in each box. All right, so this can be the VIPs. This can be anything that corroborates the notes in the reading that they're going to just randomly put on the box. They'll take turns randomly putting it in the box. All right, one student is going to say something about any box and label it number 1. So after the boxes are filled out, the whole grid is filled out, the first student will write number 1 in any box on that grid. And then they will say something about it, how it connects to the reading, why it's so important, why it's in a box. The next student then will pick another box, any box on the grid, and write number 2 in it. They will explain that second box. Then that student has to connect box number 2 to box number 1. All right, and then we'll continue the cycle in the group. So the next person will write number 3 in the box and connect box 3 to 2 to 1. Now, we do encourage the group members to help each other out to kind of make those connections with the text and make those connections of the very important ideas they have identified. For example, here's an even dozens grid. All right, so we'll take turns, and the first thing that I will go back to is the reading on homework. So in my box, I'm going to write homework, and then I'm going to write number 1. All right, and I'm going to talk about a little bit homework. What is the policy on homework? Is it effective? Is it not? I thought the reading really summarized the importance of homework, but on the same hand, that sometimes homework can be burdensome for some students, and it doesn't make that connection between what's going on in the class and what's going on for the homework. So the next student will then have box number 2. All right, so they might pick affluent communities, and they'll write number 2. So then this student will talk about what affluent communities and how that impacts homework. So they're connecting box number 2 to box number 1. Then the next student will pick any other box and do number 3. less rigorous assignments. Well, according to the article, those students that were in lower come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds have less rigorous assignments, all right, than those that come from affluent communities. So I'm going to put number 3 in the box. So that goes from 3 to 2 to 1. I've just connected all 3 of those boxes. And so you will continue this cycle. I have students continue this cycle until they've connected the whole grid. All right? So that's even dozens. And like I said, there's a step-by-step handout that goes with this presentation to kind of help you with that. At the end of this, students will then summarize everything from the grid. And I would say a 25-word gist. I mean, you can go, you can use more words to kind of summarize this, but it's usually a gist. And the gist is just basically a summary. So they will summarize everything that they've been connecting the dots with in 25 words. All right? And that would sort of be like the exit ticket for this even dozen strategy. So here's the now what. How can you incorporate any of these strategies into your specific content area? All right? Are there specific standards that this might be particularly useful? So this is going to be part of the homework assignment, trying to figure out where might this fit in. And it can go with any content area. All right?
All right, so for writing, so every content area should have at least a high 5 of writing strategies to use that are easy and promote student learning. We know our English teachers have a ton of writing strategies, but every content area can at least come up with 5 good ones. So this strategy I'm going to present to you is called response cards. Response cards collect student responses to teacher prompts. So they can be used for student reflection, and they can be used for easy, quick, fast feedback for the teacher. Why do we want to use this? Because it's easy to use. We could all use something that is easy to use and manageable. Students can use this to reflect, to apply their knowledge, and to discuss what they're learning in class. And it's timely and useful feedback to inform instruction. We can use them as entry slips. We can use them as exit tickets. They don't take a lot of time in our class. How do you use them? You can use index cards or sticky notes, or even small slips of paper. Completed cards can be used for class discussions since they can be distributed without disclosing the original writer, so they don't have to know who wrote the card that they have in their hand. So our first strategy for the response card is called an RSVP card. So you just give the students a blank index card and assign them one of these prompts, or let them pick one of these prompts. A connection between today's content and what the students learned the previous week, a question about the content of today's class, a definition of a key concept, an advertising slogan or song title that the student really likes that might represent what you're learning, an opinion about something about which the student feels strongly, a solution to a classroom or school problem, a fact that really struck the student, a hypothesis about an experiment or research project, a preference for learning in your class, an answer to a test question you've provided. Response card strategy number 2, an entry slip. So you could use the same prompts from strategy number 1, give it to them on an index card in advance. So you can have the prompt written on it, or ask the students to write the prompt on it themselves. Instruct them to bring that completed card in on a specific day, like the next class period. And it'll be their entry ticket to the next class. Then you can have a short discussion on it, or use it to work on your lesson for the day. Response card strategy number 3, the 1-minute paper. So stop your class a little early, 2 or 3 minutes early, and ask the students to respond briefly in writing to the following 2 questions. What was the most useful or meaningful thing you learned in class today? What question or questions remain uppermost in your mind as we end this session? So collect their responses and spend 5 minutes of the next class discussing them. So like I said, these strategies don't take a lot of time. They're very brief, and you can use them to inform your instruction. Strategy number 4, the muddiest point. Determine what you want students to reflect on. Reserve a few minutes at the end of the class and ask students to reflect on a specific piece of content. Ask, what was the muddiest point of this topic today? So what didn't they get? What was sticky? What was the muddiest point of this week? Something that you didn't understand, it was thick to get through. they still don't have a clear understanding. Collect their reflections and determine what you need to reteach or review during the next class, and respond to student feedback at the beginning of the next class. Response card strategy 5, the reaction sheet. So identify a segment of the lesson to which the students will react. Then ask students to fold a sheet of paper into 4 sections and label them. What put you to sleep and why? What is still confusing? An aha moment, and how will you use this information? Students will write answers in each box and then tear them apart and share them on a data wall. Then your students can compare their responses for similarities and differences. Strategy number 6, the 3-2-1 response card. Select a content segment and then design an activity around a skill or concept you want the students to learn. Ask them to identify 3 key things they have to know to understand the topic, 2 questions they still have about the topic, and 1 thing they'd tell someone about the topic. And lastly, strategy number 7, the writing reflection. Assign a daily reflective question around the content during the last week of the marking period, and use the responses in student conferences. So here's an example for math. On Monday, you want the students to write 2 things you want someone to notice about you as a math student. On Tuesday, you ask them to describe the strategies you have learned this 9 weeks in math. Wednesday, describe how you can use what you've learned in math in the real world. Thursday, write about what you find most difficult in math. What can I do to help you? Friday, write a letter home that describes you as a math student this marking period. So you can use that in your student conferences to plan future instruction. So again, the now what? How can you incorporate these strategies in your specific content area? And what standards might these strategies be particularly useful?
We will have for you uploaded to the wiki step-by-step directions that kind of summarizes these strategies too, and you can always stop one of us in the hallways if you need some clarification before implementing. So invite us to your classes, invite a colleague to your classes when you implement these strategies so we can see what's working, what's not working, what questions you still may have. Let's get our power tools on. Have a good one.